All right, you are ready to go.
All right, we'll call the April 10th, 2023 P&Z Planning and Zoning meeting to order. We need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Let's do a quick roll call first.
Okay.
Mike,
Here.
Shelley,
Here.
Wes,
Here.
Matt.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Then we'll move on to the minutes from our March 6, 2023 meeting. Did anyone have any suggested changes? If not, could we make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right, then we had a rezone application for Thunder Valley lots 1 and 2, formerly lots 37, 38, 39. So it looked like this was just a courtesy. So the 3 lots that were on this original plat, the developer wants to just make into 2.
Correct. And they are currently zoned R1, which will not allow him to build duplexes. So that's why the request is from R2.
Was this plan originally to do duplexes?
No.
Oh,
No.
Where's this at again?
And Angela and Jean coming down the first.
I can't imagine having a yard in the truck.
So all 3 of them, 37, 38, 39.
So
Right,
would it
have
just
they-
be 37 and 39 then, like 37?
Actually, they're renamed as lots 1 and 2.
Okay, but that, they do it that way,
Mhm.
just split that way.
There is, let me, see if this comes up. This is kind of what it's gonna look like.
I got it. It's impossible to find you guys.
But you're here.
I parked downstairs, my GPS took it. I asked Mike, he was there,
Oh,
chief of police, and he's like, this side door. I checked every door before I got into right one.
We're just looking at a replat, so.
well, rezone.
Or rezone.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
I don't think I think it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, yeah, as you know, starting somewhere like from here, I have a duplexes all the way around, all the way up to that, so it shouldn't be too bad. It just, right now, this economy, single family is close to $500, and interest rate is so high, we're just sitting on the houses, you know. I can get those probably around 350 per side, so, and I have interest for that. People keep calling me.
Mhm.
Because you couldn't start another place, it's too expensive. It's gonna.
Yeah, I think when I drove through there, those are the last 2, well, would be the last 2 lots in that first phase.
No, I have lot 36 and 35 are still available,
Okay,
because on lot 4 is there is a house, but 2 more lots up, it's gonna be good single family, I could do like a sidewalk house or something, so. Because for those lots, it's easier to put split foyers or full basement, but nobody wants a full basement, it's potential leak.
I think to build on lot 38 as it was would be pretty difficult too. It seems like that would be kind of a.
Yeah, we have the detention basin was there kind of to catch all the water that coming all the way from the top. But if you put the house here, it's still, if you have too much rain, it's just gonna go straight into the house.
Right, right.
So actually, it was a Dean idea. He's like, why don't you combine those 3 lots and put 2 duplexes on it? I'm like, it's a good idea.
Mhm.
And I think it makes sense. I don't have any, foresee any issues.
I would agree. I think with how it's already set up, it seems like
Right,
it
it
would
does
make
make more
sense.
sense this way.
Because otherwise, like we said, there's a lot of data probably will be sitting for a long time.
Yeah, So since this is a courtesy, do we?
Yeah, you need to take a
Okay.
vote on it. Because what'll happen after you vote, then this will go to council tomorrow night for recommendation to yes, move forward with it. And then they'll set a public hearing for April 25th.
Okay,
And then that night, I'll ask them to suspend the second and third reading, and then that way we'll have the ordinance ready. And then you will be able to build on the 26th,
okay.
okay?
I'll make a motion to approve the rezone application for the Valley 1, lots 1 and 2.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I steal the pen from somebody?
I'm sorry.
Pen.
Okay.
Couldn't find mine.
Oh, that's right, you brought me a check.
Yeah, you asked for it.
ANNE. And the check is for the publication of the rezone hearing, public hearing, so it's not for me.
No, I don't know. Send you if you asked.
Just to clarify.
Since we are recording.
Right, right.
And I'm not visible.
Yeah.
Like the instructor over there leading the class.
Yeah, it's, normally they have a chair,
Oh, yeah.
so. Not used to standing up, I'm used to sitting all day. Look at me coming for the kill.
That's for my wife.
That's right. Thank
She's
you.
lost my, spend money.
Gotta have a good bookkeeper.
Oh, yeah, she does everything.
That's good.
Any other questions to me?
No, no.
Go.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the sign regulation ordinance.
As I told you, I was working on this, well, ironically, as the city of Asbury was working on theirs as well, so they said, just hold off, PCI said to me, hold off until we're done with theirs, and you guys can just do a mirror.
Did I hear you sign regulation under this?
Did or what?
Yeah. I have a question.
Sure.
You know that advertisements that we have on Thunder Hills and Highway 20, like for apartments,
Mhm.
can I move it somewhere inside the subdivision?
I wouldn't see why you couldn't.
I will put on one of the buildings where actually Lexi lives, like in that corner, because I already had people complaining a couple of times that when they drive, they cannot catch a number. And it's dangerous for them to slow down on Highway 20,
Mhm.
you know, so
Makes sense.
and I'm just gonna move it
It's-
inside, you know, so.
Yeah, it'll have to be a certain size, but I can get that information to you, because that's what this sign ordinance is addressing,
Oh,
is any
okay.
kind of commercial signage, realtor signage, things like that.
I mean, basically what we have was on Highway 20, but
Okay.
I think that's gonna work, or
Yeah.
should they order a new one?
Let me go ahead and I'll have Craig Elskamp get a hold of you, because he's gonna be the one that's really going to be policing this,
Oh, okay,
okay?
all right. I guess I'm gonna have over here, right? All right, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
So Asbury was pulling theirs and
So ECI said you're gonna, not the same size community, but the information inside the sign ordinance is something that I think is gonna be very effective. You've seen our sign ordinance that we currently have, and it just is so loosey-goosey that anytime I get a sign permit that comes in for a commercial, I can't deny it. So it could be 50 by 50 and neon gas on the inside of it, and you couldn't deny it. So anyway, I think this has got a lot of teeth to it, and it will help us regulate signs like Slavic wants to put out in front of his subdivision, realty signs, political signs, the little curly Q wavy guy things. So anyway, I think it's again, I read through it, I really liked it. That's before you, for your review.
So existing signs, do they get grandfathered in, or how does that
Yeah.
work? Okay.
yeah, I read through that. My initial thoughts were that it seemed like it was a lot more.
That's more
descriptive
comprehensive.
and just comprehensive, yeah. So, and I think that is appropriate for the city as it continues to grow.
Anything, Annette, that jumps like that would get people excited, you think, over
No.
anything on here that's just actually more guidance?
It's more
Not
guidance
maybe
because
a-
right now, like I said, when people do pull a permit, they're like, I said, I need to know, we've got like a lovely little permit where you have to put the sign or the size on it. And then we come back and say it's approved, just like, it's almost silly that you even have to fill one out. It's got more, the current ordinance has more restrictions in a residential than it does in a commercial. So this really strikes a good balance and it's comprehensive. And I think it's needed, you guys.
Good.
I'm just afraid we're gonna get that one billboard or whatever come to town and this is gonna be horrible.
I'll make a motion to approve the sign regulation ordinance update or draft, how do you want to say that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Good job, Annette.
Thanks.
Yes.
We did some work on fences not that, a few years ago, and it was same kind of thing, you put some guardrails kind of around it, right? I think it helps people sometimes more than anything, so
Mhm.
this could be something there too, and then we have ability to, uphold it, right?
Right, I mean, we have regulations in place that says you can't do this, and as before, it was like, really can't keep you from doing it, which is not what we want to do.
Okay, so we'll move on to the proposed changes to the city of Piasta's zoning code of ordinance. That was essentially the apartment changes that we had
Correct.
talked about. And
Yeah, so at last Thursday's work session, council started talking about this coming to you and made it very clear that they didn't want any more apartments built, period. And I think that was the sentiment with P&Z a few months ago. And it was very visible at a council meeting when we had over 35 people attend the council meeting regarding Joel Callahan's plans to build the apartments. People don't want them. Again, I don't want to rush this through. I know that some of the things that I have out there tonight, and I really, I guess it's my advice is to make sure we make the right decision one time rather than keep going back and forth on this. Do we want no apartments in C1, C2 at all? And that would include the 55 and older. That would include a convalescent or assisted living, a nursing home. We want to completely just rule that out. I mean, that's just food for thought.
I think the question to me is, if you have commercial strip on the bottom and residential on top, how is that labeled? How do we zone that?
Sure.
And that has to be a special
It can be a conditional use.
conditional use.
Right, I had the conversation with the mayor this morning and he kind of brought up a very similar situation like what West Schulte had. And under each zoning, that ordinance that we have, it says there is a conditional use as assigned or approved by the zoning officer. So we do have that in place. So if we do have a developer that comes in and wants to do something very similar to what West does, it would come before me as a zoning officer, and then I would come back to you. And would run it up the flagpole, and it would be listed as a conditional use. But yeah, I don't really want to rule that out. I'm just afraid, as I said before, with the number of apartments that are being built currently, that have had permits pulled and having that amount around 194. And if everybody built out everything that they had planned, we're going to be near 300. And I'm just afraid that even at 194, it's going to be saturated. And I'm very appreciative of your guys' feedback, of council's feedback on this, taking a look at it and really kind of pumping the brakes, because we really want to be careful how we grow, how fast we grow. My other fear is that if everything were to be built out, the market's saturated, they can't fill the apartments, and therefore they would look for them to be subsidized. So that's another fear that I have. And I know there's a demographic, there's a need for it in communities, but I want to be able to grow the community in a sustainable way with affordable market rate apartments. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Is that 194 include what's already in town?
No. That does not, Sherry Greenfield's apartments, well, the Peterson apartments are kind of a separate because they are the low income, but I would say probably another 30 onto that 194. So if you add that number to, if everybody was built out, then we're way over 300.
So is there any guidance, like from your standpoint, like when you have a certain size community, how many apartments?
I wish I had a ratio.
Yeah, ratio.
No, I don't have one in mind. I just know that we're sitting at a population of 2,000, and if you're looking at 300, that's a pretty high percentage
It is.
of apartments. And I also understand that you all took it upon yourselves to have the housing study done, and they know that there is a need for it. They know that 90-some% of people that work in Piasta do not live in Piasta. I totally get that. But are we building apartments just to have a place for those people that work in the industrial park? In a sense, yes, I kind of would like to see that, but I want it to be of a caliber that matches the scenery and the backdrop of the community. I don't want to say that we're bougie, but I mean, it's definitely, it's gonna look a little different coming or heading west on Highway 20 once you see the development of all those apartments. And I don't think that's what we want on our doorstep, personally.
Coming from the real estate side, I know a lot of people that are interested in Piasta are interested because it's an upscale community, it's clean, it's way one way or another, but that you don't have the lower income, you know?
Right.
And I think that's the biggest draw for.
And I mean, again, to kind of go back to that meeting that we had at the council level when Joel's development was looked at, and a lot of people said, you know, we weren't transparent enough, that nobody had any idea that this was coming. And then to kind of go back to the April 2021 public hearing that you had and what you experienced at that, I just know that if we move forward with this and we have that public hearing on April 25th, we're probably going to have the same amount of people that you did in April of 2021. Because I know that there are people that are just fired up that do not want these apartments. And that's simply just because they are from a certain developer, they just don't want them at all.
Mhm.
And that's really good feedback to have. At the work session, John Pratt said, you know, I want a place for my son when he's out of college to come back to, you know, an apartment. Well, he's looking and he's waiting for these apartments to be built so that when he does graduate, he can come back. Shandi, her daughter, just rented a spot above West Schulte's. So I mean, that's, you know, two testimonials of people that have lived here for a while that want to keep their kids here, and their kids want to stay. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I think the community definitely needed a mix of different types of housing, and I think now we have it because there has been development. And I think the feedback that I've heard from the community is that they don't want more. And so I think what we're doing is consistent with what the community is looking at. And I think when you look at, you know, how the community has been built, you know, the density of apartment buildings and having that many is just, it doesn't really flow with the rest of the community. So I think that it makes sense to.
Okay, so the next question, do we want to strike apartments completely out of C1, C2, including the senior apartments, the 55 and older, because that's one of the developers, they want that definition in there, and that's why ECIA helped me create that one. But again, I feel like in some cases we're bending to make one person happy when we should be looking at the overall arching community. I mean, that's who, you know, we serve at the pleasure of them. And I think that, again, it would just be a very lively public hearing. And I certainly don't want to put a sour taste in any developer's mouth, but I think rather than letting this get down the road a little bit further and becoming a larger issue, when you start to see more construction of apartments and then people calling us up saying, Matt, why did you guys approve this? You know, how did it get to the city council level when I didn't even hear about it through planning and zoning?
Agreed. Yeah, because to me, it seems like the way that we have the ordinance written, I mean, a smart developer can just literally take it by a technicality almost and start to develop property without really running it through this committee. So I'm all for it.
So removing apartments from C1 and C2, allowing them to remain in R3, I'm okay with that. Again, it would have to be something that would have to come back to planning and zoning. However, I guess I'm more interested also in removing, like in our zoning, we have townhouses and I can't remember the other language that they use, but it was like maximum of 8 units. So it's smaller more condensed, like an apartment, you know what I'm talking about, Shelley. And do we want to remove convalescent nursing homes? Because to me, that's a form of an apartment, a convalescent home. That's assisted living, correct?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, this is the living nursing home. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be for removing all of that, put it all into the Rs, R3.
okay. Well, it's already there. So I mean, it's,
Yes.
the apartments are already there. We're good.
Mhm.
And if we ever do get a product like a West Schulte product, then it comes back to me and then I can bring that to you. And we can label it as a conditional use.
So I don't want to deter someone like West Schulte. I mean, he's built some really nice,
He does.
aesthetically appealing. It's a good look for Piasta.
Yeah.
We just don't have the infrastructure to support some of the lower income housing departments. They need housing, there's no doubt about it, but we just don't have the infrastructure. We don't have public transportation, all the other stuff.
That's what I was saying.
That's a
That,
very good point.
Yep, that's a lot of traffic. Where's that gonna go?
so.
I guess the only comment on the 55 and older, is that something we want to aspire to as a community?
I can see the need for it, honestly. I mean, the demographics here, the median age is 41, 43 years old. And grandparents wanting to be a little bit closer to their children and their grandchildren.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it would go on Joel's development on that lower 40. I think that would be an ideal place for it. But again, I mean, we're kind of cherry picking here. And again, I mean, this is your decision. But I can see that being something that would probably be a huge benefit to the community.
But you run the risk of it becoming an apartment, though. That's the only kicker, right, Shelley?
Well, and you run the risk of him coming back because it won't fill.
It won't fit.
And then he says, I want to rezone it as an apartment.
Yep,
So again,
yep.
it's a delicate dance that you all have to do. I went south, so I got an accent now. I went to Burlington, Iowa. So
And I guess if you do it, you can always come back to this discussion, right?
Mhm.
What we're doing right now is saying we're good. But not at this time. Right?
and again, this is part of evolution of the city. I mean, your comprehensive plan is put there as a guide. And quite honestly, once we kind of get past a couple more steps here, then we're gonna have to, I want to bring the comprehensive plan back because it was approved in 2021 and it's already looking a lot different than what was written. So we really need to be careful and take into consideration projects like this as we move forward and make those recommendations to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think taking into consideration the median age is 41, and maybe this is more of a conversation 10 years from now to look at more of that type of makeup. But
Okay,
for
so
now, I don't deter me from moving it from.
Okay. So that would be removal of all apartments, C1 and C2, 55 and older. That would be convalescent nursing homes as well.
And then what's in R3? What's left? Just apartments?
Apartments, I do, let's fill in this up edit. Let's just do search.
I think with having the conditional use, I think for us, it's all about making sure that it's in the right location in the city, and I think that would allow for us to have input on that if a developer wanted to come in and do something different.
And at least come out of the discussion. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So it would just be,
Yeah, I mean, you want to a point, you want things to just run, right? You don't want to have to, okay, rubber stamp everything,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but
Please.
I know.
Where am I? We got a ways to go. Let me know if I need to slow down.
There's R3 in it.
Was it? Okay,
Pretty good. I think I'm sick.
Yeah, it's like I have to look away.
sorry. This is how my day goes.
I don't
Okay?
want to sit by now.
Okay, so in a conditional use down here, you can have a nursing retirement convalescent facility. Is that something that you would want to remove as well? I mean, now's the time to make the recommendation. And what I can do is, based on tonight's discussion, I already have it set up on the agenda tomorrow for them to look at the recommendations, but we can always wait till the 25th And have it, you can have an emergency meeting, so to speak, to have you all look this over again. And then get it before then for the, with the recommendation on the 25th for the May 14th. I think that's the second Tuesday of the month to have the public hearing.
What does conditional use mean? It means it has to come in front of us and the council to get approved.
So right down here, any other similar uses is deemed to be consistent. So these are considered a conditional use right now. They wouldn't have to come before me. They can be allowed, but they have to come to me as listed as a conditional use and be permitted that way, not as the other eligible or permissible uses up here. And see, I mean, we would have to even look at multiple family dwelling. I mean, there's a whole lot of apartments tucked in here. Take a look at R2. I'll go a little slower. So it looks like R3 is the only one that has the multifamily, as well as the conditional uses down here. And R3 is going to be your highest of the Rs. So anything below that, it's obviously going to be a little bit more restrictive.
So if we take it out of, because this is R2, right?
Yes,
If we take the nursing home, retirement home out of R3, are we also taking it out of R2?
no, you would have to take it out of R2 as well.
Okay.
And see, this is where I want to be very careful. And when I said on earlier that I just want to do this once. I don't want to do this twice or 3 times. Because then it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing.
So it's even in one,
I'm sorry, what?
it's a conditional use in one.
I honestly wish that when this was adopted, that it was looked at a little bit more carefully. Because there's some stuff in here that I was finding, references to a C3 zoning, we don't have a C3. And then there was also a reference to a con, which I think, I don't even know what that abbreviation, because I've never heard that before in 17 years. Other than maybe, I wouldn't even want to say what it is, but I think at the time they needed to put something in place, and this looked like it fit on the shelf pretty nice. And it's, my opinion and our city attorney is, we'd rather just get rid of it and rewrite the whole thing. But I think at this point, we're too deep into the woods right now, so we need to just take baby steps with this, but just not so many baby steps in a short amount of time. To kind of get it back up to where it needs to be. So even here in the R1, we can remove these as a conditional use too. I mean, this is really, this is the time to do this, is to say, this is what I don't want as a conditional use, or I do want as a conditional use. R1 is pretty, that's most of our neighborhoods. I mean, do you want a boarding or a lodging house there? No, I don't.
What does that mean? What is a boarding house?
The only thing I can think of is like Airbnb, like opening it up to Verbo. Boarding could also be, I hate to go there, but it could
I
also
was
be,
thinking foster children.
right, or, a troubled,
Yeah.
Well,
I was thinking
there
forest
was one in
station.
our subdivision that was foster,
who?
in our, where we are, just around the corner from us, there was a foster home.
What was there?
They just moved last year or a year and a half ago, maybe. I think it's been 2 years. But so they must.
I would say daycare should stay there. That's probably the in-home daycares.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't want to take those away.
We need more.
No
of those.
barriers.
Well, the thing of it is, I guess if you really went in and just started taking a lot of this stuff out, it's gonna drive the discussion, right? If that's what we want, then that's all right.
There's probably gonna be an Airbnb discussion with the Field of Dreams stuff
Oh, yeah.
going on. A
Oh,
lot of
that's a
cities
very
are
good
taking
point.
steps.
great thought.
Yeah, don't know what the answer is, but it's probably something we need to discuss at some point, maybe not.
I don't even know if people would think about saying anything, would you?
You're gonna see it as a gold mine, I think.
Yeah, would you say, I don't know if I was gonna do I mean, I'll just be frank, if I was gonna rent my house to somebody and pay me a whole bunch of money to go watch a baseball game, I would not call Annette Ernst and tell her I was doing it.
Right, well, because that Ernst almost did that her very first year living in Dyersville. And it's written on my apartment,
For
my
that.
55 and older.
Well,
apartment.
yeah, that's, thank you. What would the rule should,
Like, even if you bought it, like an investor came in and bought a house and was renting it out. What,
There's really no way you could police it.
You could police it,
Yeah.
right? That's the kicker.
But I mean, it would have to come in and be identified as a boarding house. And then that's where you could say, no, it's not in our zoning. We don't allow it.
I know the city of Dubuque is really strict on Airbnbs and where they designated, and I don't know like what their language is about it, but
Okay.
I've had friends who tried to open an Airbnb and they were told that they couldn't by the city, so,
really?
Wow.
but I don't know how they
Did
approached
they
it.
take
or I
the
don't-
rental course? Like as an investor?
I think so, because they have rentals in East Dubuque. But
I know people have several of you.
theirs was like in a resident, like strictly residential neighborhood, and I know there are Airbnbs downtown, but I don't know if it was where they were
Is it
at.
historical?
You know, it was like kind of up on a bluff, but not historical, like,
Okay.
I think their house is built in the 50s, but
Interesting.
yeah, I could see those popping up
Mhm.
for sure.
I'm assuming they will, and they're fine. So it's gonna take one bad person to have a huge party in a neighborhood to upset a bunch of residents.
Well, Airbnb is pretty strict in general about like parties at a, like, I mean, if you read the, I don't know if you guys know what Airbnb is, I'm sure you do. But if you read the,
They're pretty,
yeah, like no extra guests, no parties, no like.
So the contracts they have in place,
Yeah,
Okay.
they usually are pretty strict, and if there's extra, there's always a charge, and the police will be called and stuff like that. So I mean, they're usually pretty straightforward, but
I'm assuming there's reasons why so many cities are going to regulate it a lot more. We're really small, but I don't know what field dreams, what it means.
coming in.
I want to say I'm against it. I think it's good. We utilize it, so.
I mean, last year they had 300 baseball games in the Field of Dreams, and that was last year. I think it was to come.
It's gonna be astronomical.
Yes.
well, then all this baseball fields are gonna be out there, softball fields.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like to come, there's just. gonna be-
Oh, sorry. Do you take everything off of there but daycare and preschool?
I think so.
Well, I-
One.
Yeah, and I mean, the funeral home,
We already got one there.
yeah, that's right.
We don't need
So it's
two.
kind of like,
our demographic isn't ready for a second one.
right. Especially with median age being 41. I would-
And quite honestly, like a cemetery, there's nowhere, where would it go? Honestly, unless we did so much substantial growth south of here. I mean, I'm like, the only thing I would want to take out of here maybe is a group dwelling, that kind of concerns me a little bit. I'm glad this is being recorded because I can't take notes on all this. So,
Group dwelling meaning, like, what type, like a townhouse or?
don't look at the screen, okay?
Okay.
Like ARC and Goodwill, like a home.
Let's just see what the definition is, if it's in here at all, and it's not.
That's what a garage is.
Yeah, that's, I always wanted to know.
Do you scroll up to dwelling? Is it
There it is.
go a
You go.
little bit more?
There you go. Look at you. Dwelling group.
Multiple family there. That's
Keep going there.
Group dwelling is a dwelling that is one of a group of two or more dwellings on the same lot, and includes a dwelling of a surveyed strata that with common properties. According to Google.
Well,
The track ones are duplex.
We don't even
if
have,
we don't have it defined, I don't think we have a need for it. I mean, I
Well,
think
we
just take it off.
we don't have a need for this one either, daycare adult.
Oh,
We don't
yeah.
have anything that's associated in our zonings to address this. So this is where it's becoming more,
They copy
Problematic.
and pasted from different.
yeah, I just, again, I think this was just something that looked nice on the shelf and we thought it's ready, let's just adopt it. So as you can see, this, we're really getting into the weeds, and I think it's gonna take a little bit more time than what we want to spend here tonight to do that.
Agreed.
So if I could task you to go out, and I'll set it up in a Word document so you can go in and mark out and put your comments on there. And then if it's okay, if we reconvene right before the next meeting on the 24th to try to, because I know council really wants to get something done in a shorter amount of time, but I want to be one and done. I don't want to keep coming back, because when you think you put out one fire, another one is ignited somewhere else. Because knowing our developers, if I can't build this, then I can build this, and I don't want that to happen.
Mhm.
As long as we're okay waiting. Can you,
Well,
I mean, I could go
can
ahead,
you go ahead and we can make updates?
and,
Well, they're gonna need to review it tomorrow, aren't they?
yeah.
All nighter, kidding,
Order the pizza.
never did that,
No, I'm not.
late, but never that.
I mean, we've had previous discussions about the apartments, I think. Because there's a lot of momentum around that, I would think that. But I know you don't want to keep coming back to this either, so.
And again, I mean, there's probably no harm in just moving forward and, with the recommendation saying that no apartments, no senior, no 55 and older, and in the C1 and in the C2, and then removing the duplexes, the other things that we talked about. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. And then just put in the letter of recommendation that there will be further review of each zoning ordinance to address other questions that, or instances that were raised at the meeting tonight, if you're okay with that. And that'll keep them on a trajectory of
Yeah.
setting the public hearing tomorrow night for the 25th and getting it out of the way.
I mean, just to say this, though, is if we don't, in the next 2 weeks, there could be
They can pull
5 more
permits.
permits pulled.
Mhm.
Especially knowing that it's going on.
Right, and I just checked, there's nobody who's joined the meeting, but that's not to say that once I publish it tomorrow, they're not gonna listen to the voice recording, and that was one of the questions that the mayor and the attorney and I talked about today. There's nothing keeping them from doing this. However, that resolution that I talked about earlier, on the moratorium, that if we decide to go and say no apartments in C1 and C2, no townhouses or whatever, the way I have it written up and stricken out, then that moratorium, that resolution will be passed tomorrow night, and that nobody can pull a permit, which kind of really, in a sense, buys us more time to get through the rest of this
Mhm.
and do it the right way. So even if we don't get to the point where we could say, hey, here's our pretty bowed up zoning ordinance, that resolution will still be passed and nobody will be able to build anything. So I would just go back to council with the rezone request that we talked about earlier from Slavic, and then our sign ordinance will be passed. And then the recommendation to remove the C1, C2 apartments, and townhouses and all that other junk.
And R3 or no?
I think at this point, let's just move forward with the C1, C2, removing the apartments. I'll also strike out the definition for senior apartments, 55 and older, because we don't want that either. And we should be good. So in essence, that really, that definition for senior apartments that I put in there, it doesn't even exist at this point, so no harm, no foul there. But I'll still send you out the document in Word so that you can go in there and,
Yeah,
Work it out.
and you can tell council that we can, especially some of these key ones like R1, right? I mean, I think that's there's probably some key ones we could look at and give a recommendation, adjust here as we get
Right.
going. Just to clean it up, like when we're sitting here going, what's that?
Mhm.
Why
Yeah.
do we?
well, a lot of it's gonna be here in your definitions, because that's what you rely on for
Right.
those permissible eligible use. It's like, well, tell me what a group home is. Well, I don't know. It doesn't say group home. You have to tuck
But
away
we could
somewhere
also,
nicely.
we could also take the approach of permissible eligible uses as a single family dwelling under R1,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
And then everything else, you come talk to us about.
Oh, we could.
Right, I mean, you could make it pretty simple, right? I mean, and maybe that's not, maybe that's not a bad approach, don't overcomplicate it, right? I don't know,
I agree with you. I mean, in my head,
that's what we
how
want,
I-
what do we want? We want that.
Mhm.
We're gonna zone this R1, we want single family dwellings. Go do it.
Yep.
So.
So R1 should be, I totally agree, single family houses, if you wanna have an additional daycare.
Daycare,
inside,
yep, okay.
That's it.
Yep, check.
If
I
there's
got small
animal
kids.
daycare, is there, do you have to have a permit for it?
I think you have to be licensed by the state.
State does.
But the city, you do not.
No, we don't have a business license, which we probably should. And most communities are like $15 or $20 a year.
And I think that's where a lot of Airbnbs and that they have that, where you have to have a permit that way, like.
Nothing
business
else,
on
it's
your
just
home.
awareness that you're doing,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Which isn't a bad thing.
I definitely think that gives the city more leverage if you have it simply defined that way. So then when other people are trying to do something outside of that, then they are coming to talk to you. And they're,
Yep.
yeah, so.
But I think in the spirit of tonight is, I mean, yeah. You have to be careful, right? We're taking care of this city, not a couple of folks, right? And I get it, it's frustrating and it's disappointing, but if you look at this place 20 years from now, what do you want it to look like, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So is it, we approve what's out there then, basically, or?
We do, and I'll add that the definition for senior apartments be stricken. So that's taken out. Okay, so absolutely no apartments of any type in C1 and C2. Is that what we're looking at?
Yep.
Correct.
So you have a recommendation?
I'll make a recommendation to take the apartments out of C1, C2, keep them in R3 and strike out the definition of 55 and older apartments, convalescent nursing facilities.
You second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Alright.
Aye.
I'm glad this is recorded. I don't think there's anyone online, but we'll double check, so for citizen comment. Nope, we're the only ones here.
Any other items? I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.